Darren Bergman is the Shadow Minister for International Relations and Cooperation with the Democratic Alliance, and he joins us now via Zoom for more. Thank you so much indeed for joining us. You heard the Deputy Minister of International Relations speaking there and told the story of where we place Russia in our relationship, particularly when it comes to BRICS and perhaps in the way that we've dealt with the Ukraine crisis. What are your thoughts on the position that South Africa should have taken if you disagree?
Hi, Peter. Yes, thanks for having me. I do believe that South Africa is looking at we're looking a little bit weak on this opportunity here. I believe if we're going to meet with Sergei Lavrov, I think what we should be doing is making it clear that the only item on the agenda is going to be the withdrawal of Russia from Ukraine. I think cessation, we must be very clear, is giving Russia the land that they've already captured in Ukraine. And what I think Ukraine would want is a withdrawal, that that Russia goes back to Russia and Ukraine keeps what was actually Ukraine's. So at this stage, I think what the DA would say is that South Africa needs to be very clear that we should not antagonize the free world at this stage, considering that we're busy asking for a loan from the IMF and we have the grey listing over our head at this stage.
The government has said that the best way to solve the crisis in Ukraine is for dialogue, and that by picking sides, you lessen the chances of dialogue succeeding. Is that not an approach that might work?
Well, the Democratic Alliance has been on record since 2014, where we've urged the president to use his proximity to both President Putin and the free world to basically try and get the de-escalation, where at that time, President Putin could have, it was the escalation of the Crimean Peninsula, where we were saying, use your proximity there and not take a side, but just de-escalate the escalation that was taking place in the Crimean Peninsula. We then were on record around 2017, 2018, saying that in the Donbas region, you had basically the same scripts that had played out in Georgia with Russia, taking place there with the building of, the building up of resources on the borders of Ukraine. And we again said, don't take sides. All you had to do is use your proximity in BRICS and with the free nations to, again, just de-escalate the tensions that we're building. And only up until the incursion of Russia into Ukraine, only then did the DA say, okay, well, now you have to call for the withdrawal of Russia from Ukraine. So the whole time we were talking about neutrality, now, unfortunately, what you're seeing, you could hardly say that South Africa is neutral. Nothing that they say, whatever they say is talking to neutrality or non-aligned movement, but their actions, nothing in their actions are pointing to neutrality.
Are you saying that South Africa has chosen a side? Our voting records at the UN and places like that suggests we've tried to abstain, we've tried not to pick a side, but our actions, are you suggesting that we've picked a side? And if so, which side have we picked?
Well, definitely in looking at the UN votes, I would say that the rest of the world would look at those votes and say that, sitting on the fence or being silent is still a vote. If trade tariffs were to be dished out, favorable trade tariffs were to be dished out from, let's say, the Western worlds like UK, EU or US, where we have far more bigger trade concessions and we have bigger bilateral trade with those countries than we do with Russia. I would want to be more aligned to those votes because of how it affects the pockets of the people in South Africa. I would say that they have a bigger case to say that it looks and it's perceived that South Africa is definitely more aligned to Russia than Ukraine. And when you got the president talking on the phone more to President Putin than to the president of Ukraine, and having more engagement with the embassy of Russia than the embassy of Ukraine, I think then we're talking about the perception, at least, moving favorably, definitely towards Russia, and clearly.
Do you think that our membership in BRICS has made it difficult for us to have, some might say, a more independent voice when it comes to Russia and China?
Well, I think we've got to question our membership in BRICS. I think we have to question how equal we are in BRICS and where that membership takes us. I mean, are we equal partners, or are we the exploited in the BRICS relationship? I think if you look at what Brazil and India and China get from Russia within the BRICS relationship in terms of concession when it comes to things like fertilizer or gas, in terms of discounts or as I say, trade tariffs and that, what does South Africa get? And I think when you look at it in terms of diplomacy, I think we've been dictated to more than we've actually had bilateral arrangements and agreements. So I would say that I don't think we're equal partners when it comes to this BRICS relationship. I know that our ministers like to throw it in our face that we are in BRICS. We pay a lot to be there, I must be honest with you. Whether the cost-benefit ratio is in our favor leaves a lot to be desired.
What should Minister Pandor be saying to Minister Lavrov when he arrives?
Well, I must tell you that if I was any of the ministers in that portfolio, and I just came out of the NEC race, and I saw that my ratings were at an all-time low, not just in the ANC branches. And, I talk about my ministers in the international relations portfolio, and I see Gwede Mantashe suffers the same fate as they do. I would ask myself, is my party getting enough votes from within our constituents in the party? And are we gaining votes by our supporters itself in our country? And then, therefore, does our foreign policy talk to that? So if I was the minister, I would do something bodacious and rather be bold. And, as Minister Pandor had done in the past, call Russia out and be bold and talk to counterparts and say, what's it going to take for you to withdraw, and withdraw immediately, number one. Number two, stop using South Africa as a playground to bring your warships, bring your exercises here. Because let me say this, the China-Russia exercise that takes place here, yes, we've had America come and bring their exercise to South Africa, but how would we be placed if that warship from Russia immediately leaves our shores to go to Ukraine and is part of the war, in a few months' time?
He's also going to be visiting Botswana, Eswatini and Angola as well. What do you make of that? Is this South Africa, we can say BRICS, with the chairperson of the BRICS this year, and we're going to be hosting it. These other countries, what do you think this trip means for Russia to go to those states in particular?
Well, look, I wear my SADC cap as well, and I know that terrorism is a threat. I do believe that when it comes to SADC, there's a lot of opportunity, and I think when Russia and China are involved, they seek out opportunity. I do believe that the SADC power is one of those vulnerable areas in the south where countries like Russia believe that they have the answers for Southern Africa. I believe that this is a lobby and relationship exercise in diplomacy, and I think that's exactly what's happening. I don't believe every country in Southern Africa is necessarily as gullible or as betrothed to Russia as we are. South Africa has its foreign policy steeped very, very firmly in the past. We seem to be too aligned in the past, and we can't seem to work our way out of it. And therefore, it does hamper any future loyalties or any future benefits away from, taking us away from our past loyalties. And I think sometimes people forget that Russia and Ukraine were both part of the USSR in the past. And I think they don't distinguish between the Russia of old and Ukraine and Russia of the USSR during the struggle times.
Diplomatic relations are one thing, but when you start having naval exercises together, which South Africa, Russia and China are going to be doing next month, I believe, in the Indian Ocean, that really steps things up quite a bit, doesn't it?
Well, definitely. We're not against naval exercises. I mean, I'm not sure what we have left. Unfortunately, I like to be patriotic. I like to visit the submarines and the ships. Unfortunately, I think our ships have become our submarines and our submarines have become museums. But the truth is that whatever we have in terms of whatever we can offer in the exercise, I do think that we must be careful that we're not training for war in a sense that, as I said with Russia, that a ship goes off from our training exercise and is then involved in a specific war that we've now claimed non-aligned movements, or we've now claimed neutrality. I know that the ANC have liked to use this non-aligned movement to cover themselves and say that they're not neutral, they're actually non-aligned, as if that makes a lot of difference, which, it was cleverly used during the Cold War. So these training exercises could bite us, especially when it comes to judging things like grey listing, which I think South Africa can really ill afford to be grey listed this year.
All right, and that's where we'll leave it. Thank you very, very much indeed for joining us and sharing your thoughts with us on the programme.
Thank you, Peter.
All right, and that's where we'll leave that conversation. Darren Bergman is the Shadow Minister for International Relations and Cooperation, saying that Minister Naledi Pandor should tell his counterpart, Sergei Lavrov, who's visiting South Africa as part of a Southern African tour, that Russia should leave Ukraine, and that's how to deal with that crisis at this time.